Operation Wrath of God. In July 1973, in the small Nordic town of Lillehammer, an innocent Moroccan waiter was shot dead by mysterious men. His name was Ahmed Bouchiki. Why was this ordinary migrant worker targeted by Mossad, the world's most powerful intelligence agency? On September 5, 1972, 8 armed men appeared in the Olympic Village at what was supposed to be a peaceful celebration in Munich. Members of the Palestinian militant group, Black September, they headed toward the Israeli team's quarters. There, wrestling coach Moshe Weinberg was the first to fall to gunfire, followed by weightlifter Yosef Romano, who was shot dead while desperately resisting. The perpetrators took 9 remaining hostages and demanded the release of 242 imprisoned comrades. However, the West German police rescue operation ended in tragic failure. A gunfight erupted at Fürstenfeldbruck Airport, and all hostages died. What had been a peaceful sports festival became overnight the worst Olympics in history. Immediately after the September 6 incident, Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir convened an emergency cabinet meeting. Known as the Iron Lady, she declared with a trembling voice, "If they don't want to coexist with us, we have no obligation to coexist either. Now we must forget peace and show our strength." At this moment, the curtain rose on a grand revenge drama that would span the globe. Without retaliation, there can be no deterrence. This belief became the starting point for assassination operations that would continue for 7 years. In the meeting room, Defense Minister Moshe Dayan, Foreign Minister Abba Eban, and Mossad Chief Zvi Zamir gathered to establish a secret committee called Committee X. In their hands was a target list for which intelligence gathering had already been completed. This was a comprehensive revenge roster that included not just the actual perpetrators, but also financiers, arms procurers, and those who provided safe havens. Mossad's special unit called Caesarea was selected. Nicknamed Kaidan, Sword, the members of this secret team were elite operatives chosen only through recommendations from military superiors or comrades in arms. To eliminate the possibility of spies, volunteers were never accepted. They were provided with perfectly forged passports, hideouts throughout Europe, and an intelligence network that monitored targets' movements 24 hours a day. The operational methods emphasized psychological warfare elements. Rather than simply eliminating targets, spectacular bombings were required to instill fear in enemies. Close-range shootings, letter bombs, car bombs, and home-rigged explosives, each method aimed to plant fear in survivors that, "I might be next." On October 16, 1972, the first to be assassinated was Wael Zwaiter, a translator and cousin of PLO leader Arafat. He was gunned down with 12 bullets by Mossad operatives in front of his Rome apartment. While appearing to be a mild-mannered intellectual, intelligence networks indicated he was deeply involved in logistical support for the Munich incident. This assassination sent the first shockwaves through PLO associates. However, at this point they still didn't understand the gravity of the situation. They assumed it was a one-time retaliation. But reality was different. Israel had begun a full-scale hunt. On December 8, 1972, in Paris, the next target was PLO representative to France, Mahmoud Hamshari. His assassination method boasted unprecedented sophistication. Mossad operatives spent weeks observing his lifestyle patterns and discovered that he called his wife every morning at exactly 9 o'clock. One night, operatives broke into his apartment, dismantled his telephone, and planted a small explosive device. The next morning, when Hamshari dialed to say "good morning" to his beloved wife, the explosive detonated. He died instantly, and the entire building shook violently. This incident made PLO executives afraid to even use telephones. In April 1973, PLO associate Basil Kubaisi was shot dead in Paris, France. In June, Mohamed Boudia died from a car bomb in Cyprus. By this time, targets were forced to live in constant fear of death. They disguised themselves when going out, regularly changed residences, and avoided contact with anyone but trusted individuals, truly living underground. But what they feared more than death itself was the psychological pressure of not knowing when, where, or how their lives would be targeted. Mossad's strategy was working. However, the wheels of fate began turning in an unexpected direction. On July 21, Mossad's greatest blunder occurred in the small Norwegian town of Lillehammer. Operatives mistakenly identified Moroccan waiter Ahmed Bouchiki, who was leaving a movie theater, as PLO executive Ali Hassan Salameh and shot him dead. This man was completely innocent, a decent citizen working in Norway while leaving his pregnant wife back home. Moreover, there were many witnesses to the incident, leading to the arrest of 6 Mossad operatives. International criticism was severe, and operations were forced to temporarily halt. For Mossad, known for its perfectionism, this became an indelible stain. But the flames of revenge did not die out, they continued burning with even greater obsession. January 22, 1979, Beirut. The biggest prize pursued for 7 long years was Ali Hassan Salameh, the de facto leader of Black September. Operation Wrath of God was executed as the completion of revenge that had taken care of 11 targets in an eye-for-an-eye manner. His elimination held symbolic meaning. In a quiet residential district of Beirut, a remote-controlled bomb planted in Salameh's car exploded. The blast extended 50 meters in radius, and he was completely obliterated. At this moment, Israel declared that revenge for the 11 souls of Munich was complete. But ironically, Operation Wrath of God, which eliminated over 20 terrorists by the end of operations in 1979, did not bring peace to the Middle East. Rather, this operation that Mossad operatives executed perfectly demonstrated short-term deterrent effects but ultimately made Middle Eastern affairs more complex in the long term. Nevertheless, to this day, Israel continues to maintain its stance of retaliation wherever you are. In the end, while Mossad thought it had performed a perfect revenge drama in the spirit of an eye for an eye, in their case it was the ironic reality of no matter how many eyes you have, it's never enough. Operation Nemesis. The not guilty verdict that rang out in a Berlin courtroom on June 3, 1921, shocked the world. A man who had killed someone was boldly acquitted. Why did this happen? It was because the courtroom had transformed from a simple murder trial into a historical tribunal for the massacre of 1 million people. The story begins in the midst of World War I, in the Ottoman Empire. In spring 1915, Interior Minister Talat Pasha ordered the forced relocation of Armenians under the pretext that they had collaborated with the enemy nation Russia, but in reality it became systematic genocide. Armenians were forced to march into the desert under the guise of relocation, and many lost their lives to starvation and violence. Talat coldly orchestrated this systematic massacre that claimed over 1 million victims. When the war ended, the Ottoman Empire collapsed. The Ottoman Empire sentenced Talat Pasha and others to death in absentia at war crimes trials, but they had already fled abroad and were living comfortably in Berlin and Rome. The surviving Armenians were in the depths of despair. They had lost their families, been robbed of their homeland, and even justice seemed beyond their reach. International interest was waning, and the Great Massacre was about to be treated as if it never happened. However, the leaders of the Armenian Revolutionary Federation ARF chose a different path. At a secret meeting in 1920, one resolution was passed: if the law will not protect us, we will execute justice with our own hands. The operation was named Nemesis, after the Greek goddess of revenge and justice. The targets were Talat Pasha, the mastermind of the massacre, Djemal Pasha, who commanded military operations, and Baheddin Shakir, who carried out massacres in the provinces. They were scattered around the world in hiding, but Armenian avengers were steadily closing in on them. The first target was Talat Pasha, the mastermind of the massacre. Living peacefully in Berlin under an assumed name, he began to be persistently stalked by 21-year-old Soghomon Tehlirian. Tehlirian was also a massacre survivor who had lost most of his family, including his mother. On the morning of March 15, 1921, Tehlirian, who had been waiting for Talat as he went out for a walk, pulled the trigger at close range. Talat died instantly from Tehlirian's bullet. Tehlirian did not flee and was arrested on the spot. The trial held in Berlin became the focus of worldwide attention. The prosecution charged him with premeditated murder, but the defense argued that the defendant lacked criminal responsibility due to psychological trauma, while transforming the courtroom into a venue for testimony about the Armenian genocide. The trial featured testimony about the reality of the Armenian genocide, revealing details of forced relocation and killings. The courtroom transformed from a simple murder trial into a place that questioned historical truth. Tehlirian himself emotionally recounted how his family had been lost in the massacre. On June 3, 1921, after only 1 hour of deliberation, the jury returned a not guilty verdict for Tehlirian. Legally, the lack of criminal responsibility due to psychological trauma was cited as the reason for acquittal, but it is believed that the trial's revelation of Talat's involvement in the massacre also influenced the verdict. Through this verdict, the Armenian genocide gained international recognition, and light was shed on the historical darkness that was about to be forgotten. Tehlirian's acquittal accelerated the Nemesis operation. In April 1922, Bahedin Shakir, leader of the massacre execution units, was assassinated in Berlin. In July of the same year, Navy Minister Djemal Pasha was shot dead by two Armenian youths in Tbilisi. In Rome, former Prime Minister Said Halim Pasha lost his life, and massacre leaders in various locations successively received divine judgment. In just 2 years, most of the main masterminds of the massacre had disappeared from this world, but the true victory of the Nemesis operation was not the assassinations themselves. The greatest achievement was that through testimony about the massacre's reality in courtrooms around the world and media coverage worldwide, the term Armenian genocide became established in international society. There are various ways to etch history that is about to be forgotten into memory, but nothing was as certain as an assassination tour around the world, truly a hands-on history lesson.